The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. 6 regions affected by Typhoon Odette are now under a state of calamity. President Rodrigo Duterte declared a state of calamity in Mimaropa, Regions 6, 7, 8, 10, and Caraga. Duterte signed the declaration as recommended by the NDRRMC during his latest public address.
I have decided to declare a state of calamity. The declaration of the state of calamity will hasten the rescue and relief and rehabilitation efforts of the government and the private sector, including saan galing tulong, be it outside or tayo-tayo lang.
The president also announced that he will be visiting 2 more areas affected by the recent typhoon by tomorrow. This comes after he previously visited Leyte, Bohol, and Negros Occidental. The chief executive says that he might go to the Dinagat Islands and Siargao to check on the extent of the damage brought by Odette. The number of casualties due to Typhoon Odette has risen to 177 as of 8 a.m. today. According to the latest NDRRMC situational report, 38 remain missing and 275 people were injured due to the typhoon. However, of these figures, only 11 deaths and 2 injuries have been confirmed. Meanwhile, over 368,000 families have been affected by Typhoon Odette. That is equivalent to nearly 1.4 million people living in about 3,400 barangays. More than 15,600 houses have been damaged by the typhoon, and the cost of damage to agriculture is estimated at 323 million pesos, while the cost of damage to infrastructure is at 227 million pesos. President Duterte expresses fears of a possible surge driven by the Omicron variant as he reiterates that the country's funds are depleted. In last night's Talk to the People, the president claimed that the government is running out of funds to support both its pandemic response and relief efforts for victims of Typhoon Odette. Though Duterte assures the public that more funding is expected under the 2022 budget, he says that he's still worried whether it'll be enough to cover future surges driven by new variants.
Mr. President.
Patong ng 2022, may alibyo na tayo. We operate on the new budget. Ang problema lang for the days that coming our way, celebration and all, baka nga makalusot talaga yung Omicron as earlier than expected. Yun ang tinatakot ko. It should require a huge expenditure again para to meet the challenges of the new variant. If there is another or several variants that would just unfold in the coming months, do you think we will survive?
Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez also told the president that although the country is seeing improvements in its COVID-19 situation, the Omicron variant should not be underestimated.
The key messages is do not underestimate Omicron. So ang ano po natin na one message is preparation is very key. So we have to revisit yung national government and LGU playbook. And then also we sustain the incident border control.
Alagang Kapatid Foundation admits encountering some logistical challenges in shipping donations to areas devastated by Typhoon Odette. On 1PH's Wagpo, Executive Director Menchi Silvestre recalls challenges in their relief operations from past calamities that they continue to experience now in the aftermath of Typhoon Odette. To address these, Silvestre says they have deployed all-in-one first responder food trucks for immediate response. These food trucks are packed with essential items during calamities, such as gensets, food and kitchen items, and chainsaws for storm cleanup. Meanwhile, Silvestre appealed to donors from Metro Manila to avoid giving out used clothing, as these could be a fire hazard. And she also noted that most of the clothes sent out to victims are no longer wearable.
Para itong nagbalik yung challenges namin ng mga panahon ng Typhoon Pablo, ng Typhoon Yolanda. Talagang logistic nightmare. Ang dami nating donations in Metro Manila. Punong-puno kami ng donasyon noon doon.
Yes,
Pero,
yes.
di ba, pero ang hirap siyang dalhin. And again, it's happening now.
The Novavax vaccine has been cleared by European regulators as of earlier this week, becoming the first COVID-19 shot of its kind in the region. Novavax CEO Stanley Erck discusses the vaccine's approval, global distribution plans, and its testing for efficacy against the Omicron variant on Bloomberg Markets European Close. Let's listen in.
There are a few features that we can talk about. One is after generating a great deal of efficacy and safety data over the past year for a protein-based vaccine, we also have great stability data, which means that we can get our vaccine out globally without freezing. We can get it stored at normal refrigerated temperatures. It can be at room temperature for some period of time, and that's going to be very helpful to get it to all parts of the world. That's probably point number one. Point number two is that we've shown that the vaccine boosts very effectively. Now, there's going to be a lot of boosting going on, particularly with Omicron, and we think our vaccine is primed for that. So those are some of the advantages that we've got.
Obviously, the dominant strain now, Omicron, in the U.S., the U.K., etc. Were you able to test against Omicron? Do you have an idea of when you might get that kind of data, or if you need to sort of update the vaccine to be able to hit individual variants?
Well, we're doing two things. One is we're evaluating the serum from people who've already been vaccinated and looking at the Omicron responses, the antibody responses to Omicron. We'll have those data within days. And so our expectation, based upon what we saw with Alpha, Beta, and Delta, is that we'll have a robust protective level of antibodies with Omicron, just as we have with the others. And in addition, we're making a new variant, an Omicron strain variant, in the data from the trials that we're doing now, the evaluations we're doing now, will guide us into whether we should be adding a new variant strain or sticking with what we have, and all those data will come out fairly soon, and we'll work with the World Health agencies to determine the pathway forward for the variant strain.
Stan, when are we going to get approval in the United States? What's the timeline there? And do you need... How critical is it that you get that approval? Because I'm really curious, if I'm vaccinated with your shot here in the UK and I want to travel to the United States, is that going to be a problem? And do you think you're going to get full uptake until you see a kind of greater swath of countries that have approved the shot?
No, I think we will get quite a bit of uptake, both as a booster and as I mentioned, there's still 40% of the population that's not been vaccinated yet, and we'll try to chip away at that in an aggressive fashion. So I think you asked about approvals. We've actually filed globally with about 8 or 9 different agencies, and I think last week we announced that the World Health Organization has approved us, which gets us a pathway into all of the developed countries of the world.
BDO clarifies that they did not add any new provisions in their terms and conditions following the widespread hacking incident that defrauded their account holders. Camille Samonte has the report.
An account holder named Jefferson is one of the victims of unauthorized withdrawal from the hacking incident in BDO. Around 100,000 pesos were stolen from his account after the hacker got his one-time password and made an unauthorized transfer. Jefferson also agreed to sign the quitclaim to reimburse his money. This means he is waiving his rights to pursue legal actions against BDO.
Kumbaga, yung choice na binigay sa akin was very limited. It's It's basically sign the papers or you don't get your money back. That's it. There are no other options that was given to me. So it's really disturbing. I believe some people would really go against that.
After the fraud incident, Jefferson got curious and started reading the terms and conditions in using BDO online banking. He was concerned upon reading that the bank has no liability if the account holder got stolen in any unauthorized transactions in their online account. This also includes fraudulent access or security breach.
So, sa pagkaintindi ko is BDO is really not liable just in case na security breaches in the future or any similar incidents, hacking incidents or fraudulent activity. So, kumbaga wala na kami handle as their clients pag may ganun pangyayari sa kanila, regardless kung kasalanan namin o kasalanan nila.
The management of BDO has clarified that there was no additional provision made following the cyber fraud. BDO also noted that the liability clause is irregular compliance in banking industry. According to a legal banking and finance expert, only the court can decide if banks will be held liable in this scenario.
Obviously, as a lawyer, my advice is always to read before you sign. But we do not all have the luxury of time to scroll through pages upon pages of terms and conditions. And not everyone has the legal training or even the understanding on how to interpret how this applies to them. But it will definitely be helpful if we frame these terms and conditions in a way that would easily be understandable to.
Razon also stressed not to blame the victims of hacking. He also encouraged banking institutions that were targeted in cybercrime fraud to be transparent in their data to find the perpetrators.
Safety is everyone's concern. Hindi lang to problema ng isang bangko or dalawang bangko. Kasi yung problema ng isa, problema ng lahat yan. Hindi tayo makakasigurado na yung mangyari ngayon sa BDO, diba? If whatever happened there, which we don't have enough information about currently, will not happen to other financial institutions.
For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Miss World stays in Puerto Rico as the organization has announced the new pageant finals and coronation date on March 16, 2022. The candidates will be competing for the coveted crown at the Puerto Rico Coliseum Jose Miguel Agrelo. The coronation night will still be a globally televised event. Details for the live event will be announced soon. And tickets purchased for the December 16 event will still be honored for the rescheduled date. Recall that the coronation night was postponed and rescheduled due to some candidates testing positive for COVID-19, as well as the increasing number of cases in the area. Time now for a quick look at some of today's headlines. Another brewing storm outside the Philippine Area of Responsibility is forecast to affect Surigao once again. The World Health Organization asks the public to hold off on holiday festivities for now, amid the threat of the Omicron variant. And the Limitless App Masters are now the first ever two-time champions in PBA 3x3 history. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.